It's podcasting time.
Aloha, I'm Matthew J. Salanoa. This is my podcast, TheSalawag's Final Cut. So on this podcast, the Salawag is my alter ego. It is my inner voice when I watch movies. The voice of madness that drives me to think about films in such a passionate way. Most people in my life don't really want to hear about it. So here I go. This is just like the Salawag's Why It's Great and Gut Reaction. This is a place for me to get my crazy thoughts out of my head. So on the Salawag's Final Cut, this is a podcast where I give a little bit of a review of the movie, but it's really, this podcast works best if you've already seen the film, because in this one, what I do is I talk about how I would improve the movie. And it's not going to be in some fanciful way of like, well, if you had 17 minutes of a love story, that'll totally beef up the, there's a caveat. There's rules to how I have to be able to improve the movie. The way I see it is, if the movie in its finished form, as we all know it, came to me 2 weeks before the movie was to come out in theaters, and the studio said, you have 2 days to shoot and 1 week to edit, and then we got to put this out to all the theaters. And so this would be what I think could be done in that amount of time, because the goal is, although I don't typically talk about budgets, the goal is to keep the amount you spend on a movie as little as possible, hence the 2 days. 2 days of filming I think is reasonable if you just need to do some reshoots. And I honestly believe that most movies can be improved by less effort than oftentimes is given to them. But that being said, here we go. Today I'm talking about Watchers. So Watchers is directed by the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan of Signs, Unbreakable, Glass, Split, Ishana Night Shyamalan. And at the time of recording this, Trap is 1 week from being released, so I'm very excited for that. But I think Ishana Night Shyamalan does a pretty good job with Watchers. Here's my little spoiler-free thoughts on the film, just so, for those of you who don't know about the movie Watchers, this came out 2024, summer. It's a story where Dakota Fanning plays an American living in Ireland, and she's given a task to go drop an animal off. She works at an animal, either a pet store or some kind of animal shelter, and she's given the task to drop off a bird at a different shelter that's like 100 miles away or something like that. And as she does, her map takes her into some woods where there is no road, and she drives for so long she can't find her way back. And ultimately she gets trapped in these woods with 3 other people who they all at night hole up in this building where they are watched by these, not that they're invisible, but that they are very difficult to see at night. They're watched by these beings who study them and watch them live their lives. It's a very interesting process. This was based on a book. I did not look that up before doing this video. I apologize. But my spoiler-free thoughts, I think overall, it's a pretty good movie. I can't really slam much of the first 70% of the movie. I think it works well enough. But I do have thoughts on the movie. I do feel like it could be changed. So if you have seen this movie, this podcast might have some effect for you. If you haven't seen this movie, then what I'm going to say, I would say doesn't really matter. I recommend you watch the movie first, form your own opinion about it, and then you can come back here and I open the floor to discussion if you think what I say would make the movie better. So here we go into the movie. So here's all spoilers. I'm going to talk about this movie as if we've all watched it. Right up front, we start off with this voiceover from Dakota Fanning describing that there's this mystical place in the woods where where people can't be out at night, or some kind of demon comes to get you. And you see a guy running through the woods. He's running past these markers. He's trying to get somewhere, and you can see him looking at the light, watching the sun go down. and basically ends with him being caught by whatever it is that's chasing him. We don't see it. And then we come to Dakota Fanning, and we see her working at the pet store, and she has this bizarre thing where she likes to put on a wig when she goes out to meet guys and pretends to be someone she's not, which is subtext for things to come. But when it all gets to it, we get to the woods. To me, when we meet the three surviving people there's the old woman and the two younger people. And one of the women I recognize her from the movie Barbarian with Justin Long. And she was fantastic in that, and she's great in this. I appreciate that because it's such a small cast, even though they're technically supporting roles, they have really good roles. I think Ishana Knight definitely does a good job of directing her cast. And the script, I think, overall works, but there's definitely, I would say, more than obvious hints that things are more wrong than they appear to be. Certainly when Dakota Fanning shows up and the rules are explained, and you see the lead woman, the older woman, and I apologize for not having her name, and she says the rules are, we don't stay out at night, and all three of them say it at once. And it's very bizarre, but I don't fully feel if it's motivated, you know what I mean? And it does almost feel like she's mind controlling the other two. So, I mean, that is kind of a hint at things to come, but at the same time, it's such a big hint. I mean, obviously, Dakota Fanning senses the need to get away. But I do think as the movie goes on, and Dakota Fanning's meddling and trying to escape and all this inevitably leads to our demons, what we learn are fairies who have been tormented and trapped on this little piece of land by man for some reason. We learn their story over the course of the movie. It feels a little bit like Split. I feel like Split was an influence in terms of, and definitely like the movie Imaginary, I think was that earlier this year or last year. It's a similar thing where you have these bizarre things happening, and interspersed are these almost documentary like seeds of exposition where it's kind of set up that the history or the possibilities, very familiar to that. I don't think that's a negative. I think if you're going to ape off of anything, Split is a good one to copy. But I think it does become a bit heavy-handed, and most importantly because it sets up the notion of a fairy-human hybrid being, which it turns out the older lady is, and she's not only that, but she's entangled in a sort of strange love situation with the scientist who built this location, or the historian, whatever he was. But I must admit, when they escape the forest, I do think it's a bit convenient. And same with when they find the hatch for the historian for his his underground lair underneath this house with the glass see-through wall. I just feel like I don't fully know that the movie benefits from these conveniences. I know it's good to protect your characters because you need to keep the action going, but wow, these conveniences are just almost too much. But I can live with it. I can live with those conveniences because of what the twist is. When we find out at the end that the older woman, it turns out, was a fairy held captive by the historian, where this all begins, and that she is the one sort of masterminding this whole situation, or at least has found a way to take advantage of it to her ends, and mostly so she can escape. But how, I don't fully understand the terms under which why she can't escape if she's half human. And not only that, really what transpires afterward, we see Dakota Fanning go to the professor's office and she learns more information, and then she goes to see the lady from Barbarian, and it turns out she's not actually the lady from Barbarian, she's the shape-shifting fairy, because that's what these fairies can do. They can shape-shift into whatever they want. They just struggle with mimicking human behavior because their goal is to mimic us and blend in amongst us. But my real problem is I really felt like the conclusion where all of this information hits us. I have seen this. This does happen in a lot of movies where we reach the conclusion, and this is sort of what I've complained about before, where it's like you see filmmakers try to kind of split the difference and make their antagonist or villain character relatable enough that they can be sort of convinced not to do the killing that they're intending to do. So when we find out that Barbarian Girl is actually the old woman, because then the Barbarian Girl shows up in her car, I just thought, okay, well, that's bizarre. Not that I would have wanted her to die, but I feel like it kind of lowers the stakes if now the villain, even as powerful as a fairy they may be, they are now confronted with two enemies instead of one. And I think it would heighten the stakes immediately if Barbarian Girl is already dead. But even if that's kind of traditional, at this point, when you're in those final moments, even if you're going to make the villain have a positive change, I really feel like, well, it's got to be, the villain has to push the need for that change so far for it to be valid. So when we're getting in this battle where this is the same thing that the Terminator sequels do, everything after Terminator 2, where if it's Terminator 1 or 2, the Terminator will just attempt to kill you. But if it's anything after Terminator 2, the Terminator will grab you and throw you around a bit first, just to make sure you have the opportunity to escape, so that they can't kill you right away. Because I guess they just want to prolong the mission, because, you know, some part of them is AI, right? So they're like, wow, well, I'm not going to get paid in my cryptocurrency as much if I kill them right away. I should throw them around first, so that 45 years from now, when Skynet is built, I can get paid my cryptocurrency like I was supposed to. I don't know. I don't know why the hell the Terminators always just throw people around instead of killing them. It's, again, one of those conveniences that I find like, well, why would you do that? You are obviously doing, this is like the only reason you would do that is so the hero can escape conveniently. It's exactly like I'm just waiting for Dr. Evil and Scott to show up and go, why doesn't the Terminator just kill him? Scott, you don't understand. You have to give the hero an easy, convenient way to escape. Otherwise, you're not being evil. Dad, I have a gun right now. We can just shoot them. Scott, you just don't get it, do you? You know, I'm just waiting for that. Every single Terminator sequel, same thing. And I'm sorry, but Dark Fate doesn't work for me. Even though they do that, no. You don't kill John Connor as a kid 5 minutes after Terminator 2. Where's the newspaper? Where's the fucking newspaper? Okay? And I apologize because I realize what I'm about to do is very condescending. And, you know, I would never want to do this. Bad. Bad filmmaker. Bad. Don't you ever do that again. Don't you ever do that again. Why did we go to Terminator 2 just for you to kill John Connor 5 seconds later? Okay? I can't fault Terminator Genesis for turning John Connor into a Terminator. I mean, that movie was off the rails before it even started. You got 5 minutes in and you killed John Connor. Bad. Bad. Naughty. Bad you. Don't ever do that again. God damn. You're out of ideas? Come talk to me. I know what to do for Terminator. I'm not fucking kidding. I got it all up here. Okay? Jesus Christ. Anyway, back to Watchers. So we have this ending sequence where she's tossing around both women. It's just kind of conventional stuff we've seen before. And again, if she's there to kill them, why is she tossing them around? And then on top of that, we have Dakota Fanning trying to explain everything that she's just learned, and at the same time trying to convince the older woman to not kill them. And it works, and she doesn't kill them. And the moment that it worked and she flew out, I thought that was a beautiful moment. But everything leading up to it, I didn't felt earned it, because you're trying to stuff two major emotional turns, both "don't kill me" and the history that we have for why you shouldn't kill me, all into one moment. And it feels very rushed. And it's also, again, we're doing the Terminator throws people around instead of killing them sequence, which has been done to death. It's been done in every superhuman medium. It just doesn't work. And to try and swallow both is just not, it doesn't work. And I also feel like it's a wasted opportunity. So
it's podcasting time.
Now we get to hear, how would you fix this? The Salawag, the crazy, condescending inner voice of Matthew Salanoa. How would you fix it? Well, I'm glad you asked. So, remember, the rules. I can't shoot another movie. That's nonsense. That wouldn't count as a reshoot. But what I can do, I'm allowed 2 days to shoot, 1 week to edit. So, what I would do, simply reshoot that ending sequence. Instead of her going to Barbarian Girl's house, she goes home. She just goes home. And she has all the stuff. And maybe she's reading it or saying it aloud. I don't know. She gets it out in some kind of way where it's clear what's-her-face can hear. And it turns out her own doppelganger is there. It's, and they reveal her having a twin later. I just don't care. But her own doppelganger is there. It's the older lady being her. And if you want to do the throwing around, we keep that just a bit. But I would say don't have her just throw her around. Have her do a killing move, and then in that moment you have the traditional, conventional Dakota grabs something, smashes it against her head. So there's a reason for her to go freak out and just kind of toss her to the side. It's got to be motivated. It can't just be tossing around for the sake of tossing around. But you give it a motivated moment, have it at her own apartment, it's just the two of them. She decided to go for her first, and then she's going to go for Barbarian Girl. And as she's trying to kill her, and Dakota Fanning is trying to get all this out, that is where, again, if you're going to copy Split, this is where I would do it. It ends up in her bedroom where the older lady, now returned to her that form, looks up and sees all the wigs. And it's like, what the hell? What is this? And now she, as a character, for a character reason, doesn't want to kill her, because now she needs to know something about her character to understand why are you wearing wigs? You know what I mean? Like, it's fucking weird. Because, again, this is another piece. Now that's also part of the finale. It's part of the moment that makes the older lady, I'm so sorry that I didn't remember the character's name or get the actress' name, but the leprechaun, whatever the hell she is, what stops the fairy from killing her is that knowledge of how she changes herself. But I feel like to hear it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It could be a lie. But if she was trying to kill her in her own apartment, which again, this is the setup of the beginning. The very fact that the way Ishana Knight chose to shoot the opening scenes where Dakota is at work and we can't see the dude who's her boss. He's just this blurry thing. The very fact that she decides to shoot that, but what we can see is her apartment, her inner life, is an empty, false life. That sets up a lot, and that means a lot. And to me, that's a false setup that we're going to come back here for some reason. And this would have been the perfect reason. You have them have that final confrontation, nobody else there. Barbarian Girl doesn't even have to be in the movie at this point. It's just about these two. But to have her have to stop and have a moment of recognition, like, you are not the person I thought you were. I mean, yeah, you didn't listen to me at all, but it's like, you don't even be yourself. What's this about? And have her have a moment of, if she's going to copy her, she's also going to need to understand why the hell she lives like this. And then it gives them a moment to have that talk, and it can be a little bit of a conversation, an actual conversation. And maybe there's still that brewing desire to kill her at first, but as she explains, and then you can show the flashback and all that stuff, and include a line. I would add a line of, I have not felt like myself since I screwed up as a kid, and I just can't be myself. I can't look at myself in the mirror at times. And so I understand why you would want to be somebody you're not. Just by having the evidence in front of her, it would give her the unshakable emotional connection with Dakota that would justify why she wouldn't kill her. And then have no lines for her. She just leaves. You know what I mean? She just leaves. And it could still be Dakota saying, I think there could be more of you out there and you don't even know it. Something. You can still leave some of the same dialogue in, but it has to be broken up in a natural way where it is essentially two scenes. You can't do it in one sequence. It's too much information. It's too much of an emotional ask for characters who did not have enough time to bond throughout the film. Because we are not in that forest for a long time, and even when we are, Dakota Fanning is spending every single second trying to escape. Every single second. There is no real breathing time where she really accepts it. I mean, there is, but it's just so brief that it doesn't really hold water. But for that same reason, that's why it needs to be two scenes. It needs to be a battle in the living room that ends in the bedroom with, holy shit, you got wigs. And this could potentially take 2 days to shoot since it has stunts and action. But I think it could most likely be done in one. With just slightly augmented dialogue, you keep most of the dialogue. But the most important thing is that the first half, the first fight, is the information that she has. And the second half is, well, this is what's really going on with me. And this is why I relate to you and why I would rather help you. But if you just start off with Barbarian Girl being also threatened and all of this, and it makes the stakes kind of confusingly high and low at the same time. The numbers are against the fairy, but at the same time, you're gonna kill both of us. Like, why would I want to help you? You know what I mean? But if it's just her, and it's her essentially facing a death that she kind of contemplates in a quiet way. She just has this absence of value of whatever it is that she might be, that she won't let herself be. But if the villain can't see it herself, then it doesn't hold enough water just to have it be said. And I understand that, women do have a better time talking to each other and relating with each other. But this thing is a fucking fairy, okay? It's not a fairy, it's a fucking fairy. It's a fucking scary fairy. So, you know what I mean? Scary fairy needs a little bit more time to just realize that she's actually stepped into someone's world whose world was much darker than she thought it was going to be. And I'm all for, the villain element recognizing something in the hero that's in tune with them. I think that's great. Like, I love Spider-Man 2 because essentially the solution to the battle between Spider-Man and Doc Ock is Spider-Man saying to Doc Ock what his old values were. He's like, this is not your value, this is not who you are. And he repeats the line that Doc Ock says to him, but augmented with what Aunt May said to him. And this revives Doc Ock's original sense of himself. And in this case, those wigs, it's too strong of a visual, because it's such a strong visual in the beginning of the movie. It's too strong of a visual not to have an effect on the villain if she was to see it herself. And that, I believe, just reshooting that ending with nobody but the two of them. And I don't think you really need Dakota Fanning talking to her sister. I don't think we need the voiceover in the front of the movie. I think it's, especially since it all gets explained by the historian later, I feel like the voiceover at the front is a sign of insecurity as a storyteller. Because visually, and in terms of getting performance, it's clear Ishana does the job. I mean, I did look her up before. I forgot what her credits are, but she's done some television. I think this is her first feature film. I'm not 100% sure, but I looked it up a while ago when I saw the movie. But, you know, performance-wise, sequences, like, just all the things a director is supposed to do, she does very well. It just, to me, since she's also the writer, I think she probably had valid reasons for wanting to do the ending the way she did. But looking at it, I feel like it completely loses the value of everything she did well in the front of the movie. Because that beginning, and I don't really feel like the flashback is entirely necessary. But if you're gonna use it, it's more powerful if it comes back to that bedroom, seeing those wigs, seeing the false life that she has all around herself, of all the false lives and things she pretends to be. You know, and you can even have Third Eye Blind help out. You know what I mean? You know, all the lives you've been living in. You know what I mean? And actually, maybe that could have been the proper ending of the movie. Maybe, you know, if you want to keep, and then this could be the 2 days. Maybe I think it would be probably just a day and a half. I think you could shoot it all in one day. My suggested reshoot. I think it could absolutely be done in one day, because I would actually reduce the action by a lot. I would just have a couple very serious stunts. But I've worked with a stunt guy. There was a way to do it very quickly. And the way I see it in my head, I think it could be done very quickly if you're not wasting time and if you really know exactly what shots to get. Again, this is the imaginations that I would be directing it, or at least overseeing what it should be. And I really feel like you could do this whole thing in one day. It would be a tough ass day, but it could be one day. And then I would also reshoot the thing at the end with the sister. I think, okay, if you want to connect it back with that voiceover, if you want that voiceover, if you want to keep it, and you want the scene with the sister, I think it's got to just end with a little bit more positive energy. It's just got to be like, we have been so bleak for so long, and you could just end it with them, like, with maybe the sister who has the horrible scar on her face, which is like, whoa, okay. Maybe the sister puts on Third Eye Blind and, you know, step off that ledge, my friend, and they just kind of sing together because they're both trying to get out of something horrible that they've lived with for so long. And then you know, you have just sort of a pick me up kind of song that shows the sisters bonding, because it's such a movie of bleakness. There is almost no joy in this film. So I think the ending, if you build it up right, you know, maybe you set that up somewhere earlier that they're listening to that song on the radio as kids or something, or it's their favorite song, something. But just have some kind of pick-me-up where, rather than just having it trying to end creepy, because I think the movie, it's just not designed that way in the front. So the ending being creepy when it's maintaining this tone, I think this is the biggest sin that modern filmmaking does, and it's not Christopher Nolan's fault. It's that everyone always copies the alpha, and Steven Spielberg was the alpha of so many generations, actually, that everyone copied his spirit and tone and making sure they were telling stories with good characters, with good hearts, or good family stories, even if the character had somewhere to grow. Steven Spielberg's storytelling sensibilities influenced generations of filmmakers. But, you know, after Jurassic Park, that started to fade away, and then we started to get new filmmakers with brand new radical ideas, and we have the Tarantinos, and Guillermo del Toro, Robert Rodriguez, and And I really feel like Christopher Nolan took that place when he made the Dark Knight trilogy, because it was so obvious. You look at Tron Legacy and just every film after the Dark Knight trilogy came out, and the way people shot movies changed. All of a sudden, it kind of went back to we were kind of getting stylistically very all over the place, you know what I mean? But Christopher Nolan grounded us all the way back in time. You know, it's this very kind of real life kind of style that kind of mixed realism or real life believability with fantasy in an approachable way. You see that influence there, but I think to me it comes to the detriment of those movies. It's like, yes, it works for Christopher Nolan, but the truth is his movies, they are not tone deaf. They don't have a single tone. They do have humor. They do have a variety of emotions going on. It's just all a bit reserved. You know what I mean? Films take on the personalities of the director and the writer and the actors and everyone who chips in, but essentially the primary spirit and spine come from the director. So those heartwarming family tales that Steven Spielberg did, or the sort of very sort of serious, almost hard-nosed realism of Christopher Nolan, which a lot of people kind of copied. But I think a lot of people copied it without remembering, hey, you know, The Dark Knight had jokes, right? Don't be obsessed with your tone. I say this, don't feel like your tone is the pinnacle of your film. Even if it's your desired ending, maybe it's not the right one. You know, maybe it's okay to let loose a little bit, to lighten up. Because I think that's really, if you're going to show the sister, then you have to have a shift. We cannot just keep being around morose stillness. There has to be a change. And, you know, to go back to M. Night Shyamalan's work as well, Unbreakable, incredibly focused tone. But even then, there were jokes. They were not loud jokes, but there was jokes. There was humor. And there was a shift, although it was quiet. It was still very much true to its voice, but, you know, at the end of the movie, when, you know, Bruce Willis picks up Robin Wright and you feel their love returned, it is like a warm shot to the arm from the rest of the movie, where even though they were having dates and they were slowly getting closer to each other, this is the first moment where they are actually embracing each other in a full kind of way. And he sets her down in the bed and he lays next to her and she holds him. Like, that closeness, that intimacy is a change tonally to this whole movie, because it's really a very stilted movie. And you could do a very similar thing. Now, it doesn't have to be Third Eye Blind, but have just a little bit more of an energy shift. Have these sisters be sisters. And I don't think that also they needed to be twins. I think that was a reasonable artistic choice. And maybe it's from the book, I don't know, but, you know, it makes sense why you would do it, but I don't think it was necessary. I think it could have easily been Dakota's actual sister or another actress who looks like her, just to have a moment of a shift. We need to have, these characters need to have a shift of some kind. It doesn't mean they have to dance to Third Eye Blind, but have some kind of intimate shift where the characters, where you can feel our main character having a difference in her life. And I think that is the beauty that this movie is missing, because, again, in looking at Split, even though it all stays very dark and tonally consistent, rejoice! Our beast does smile, and so does Casey, the main character, Anya Taylor-Joy. She smiles, not exact straight smile, but she has the relief of being recognized. And I think, again, I do feel like Watchers is sort of relevant to Split. There's such clear parallels going on. You know, whether it was intentional or not, I'm not saying Ishana was copying Split, but there's clear parallels regardless. So as long as but the most important thing is not the relationship to Split. It's what Split does, it's what Unbreakable does, it's what The Dark Knight does. The most important thing is this movies are about change. Characters don't have to change, but in this case, she needed it. We needed that shift. We needed a smile. We needed a relief. And I don't think it was earned the way the movie currently exists. I think I do think it could be done in a day or a day and a half of reshooting the finale just in the apartment and having that confrontation adjusted to basically be two scenes in one, as opposed to two scenes worth of dialogue and transformation in one. I think that's too much. I think when filmmakers do that, I think it's largely a television thing. TV does it all the time. It doesn't work on the big screen. It doesn't work on movies. And it doesn't technically work on television. We just bite the bullet because, fuck, it's an hour long and we don't have a choice. We're the audience. We have no choice but to accept that, oh, you just solved this really complicated crime in exactly 3.5 days. Okay, sure. You know what I mean? It's just like, no, that doesn't, I mean, sometimes it happens, but not always. You know, sometimes things kind of go on for a while. Yeah. Like, wow. Oh, you found the Zodiac in about 2 hours because you had to. Okay, good job. Okay, no, I don't think so. But that's why I don't watch crime shows. But that's what I'm saying. I think this is kind of a TV finale. No offense intended, but that's how it feels to me in its current form. And I think if you put that conflict in the apartment, give the villain a chance to see the wigs, to see the evidence of that there's a layer to this character that was completely unbeknownst to you, that, okay, for sure you can't copy her incomplete now. So you got to know more. But knowing more is what makes you realize that you guys have more in common than you don't. And I think that would hit the themes and the character arcs much stronger than how the ending currently exists. And then again, I do think the sisters didn't need to be twins. Whether you want to keep that or not, that's your call, you're the director, but I would say they needed to have just a little bit more of a bonding moment. It could still end with her looking out and seeing. But again, I think the voiceover telling us so much was unnecessary. You know, I think the movie, you've already explained all of these things so much in the middle portion that's almost redundant. And likewise, when it's being explained by the historian, it's almost too similar to what Dakota Fanning is saying in the beginning anyway. So it just kind of, you know, either you got to do the old school way of that kind of build up. I love that we do get that before she gets into the forest. She's at the gas station and you see all the missing people signs. I thought that was nice, but I just think a little bit more of that. A little bit more of the even though it's conventional, conventions do work for a reason, and if you have such an unconventional concept, you know, shape-shifting is not unconventional, but you're going for this whole fairies are watching us in a glass house type of idea, and that's unconventional. So if you have a super unconventional idea, it does help to have some conventions just to ease us in, to lubricate us into this new path. I'm sorry, Deadpool and Wolverine just came out. I'm still bad. But yeah, so that's basically my idea. Have a little bit more connection with the sister and just, I feel, change the location of the finale. And I think it's a much stronger picture. But that's just what I have to say. And if you see this, if you've seen the movie, what do you think? Do you think that would work? Do you have a different suggestion? Do you think the movie totally should have ended a completely different way? Do you think they never should have gotten out of the forest? I kind of think they never should have gotten out of the forest. It's kind of like, again, a convenience, but all the things being the same, you know, it's just like, okay, if you want the story to be like that only the half-human can leave, okay, but if that's going to be your conclusion, then I do think it needs to be adjusted. And I do think just the conclusion, I think you could keep the movie as the majority as it is. It's just those last 10 minutes that I feel, with adjustments, could make everything else add up to it in a much more solid, meaningful, and emotionally, most importantly, an emotionally fluid and concrete way. So that's my thoughts. That's go check out Watchers. Decide for yourself, and again, please let me know in the comments. Do you agree? Do you have your own ideas? I'd love to hear your own ideas for how the movie might have been better done a different way. Not to shit on the filmmaker, just because that's the discussion I'm having. So I open it up to you, whoever's watching, to tell me, yeah, of course my idea sucks. That's fine. But if you just had your own idea when you were watching the movie, let me know. I'm curious. Because at the end of the day, this exercise is not just for me to challenge the filmmaker or to challenge the movie. It's also, this is what I think for myself. When I'm making my own stuff, I have to have the same questions, and I say, well, I'm kind of doing this thing similar to this movie. Well, okay, how would I get myself out of this? Or if I had the time to fix this, what would I do? So it's just a little exercise for my own sort of creative muscles. So, well, if I'm in the same boat, what would I do? Not to judge Ishana at all, and not to judge the film in a kind of negative light. Just as a creative exercise, I think it's fun to do. So that's what I had to say. Go check out Watchers. Make up your own mind, absolutely. And let me know if you agree or disagree or have your own thoughts. I would love to find out. Thank you for watching. Aloha.